All right. Hello. Clearly, I'm not there today. I do want to still talk about portraiture. I think what I'll do is talk about portraiture, which is part of what I wanted to do today. I also wanted to show you some technical aspects of portraiture that you might not pick up on, but it's all the little things that make a cell phone portrait you took look a little ugh compared to, a portrait you would see in a magazine. I have all the equipment in that classroom to make what appears to be a magazine quality photo or portrait. And you have everything you need at home to DIY what at least appears to be a magazine quality portrait. But with that said, a magazine quality portrait has nothing to do with the rubric. What's on the rubric? Principle of design, evidence of experimentation through your process and decision making, evidence of an understanding of a principle of design far beyond just is there one maybe. Here, so we'll look at a collection of really strong works for this assignment, and then we'll also look at a previous class. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge selection of previous examples, but we'll get some, I don't know, hopefully, right, frankly, what I want to see is hopefully a few unsuccessful ones, and we'll look at why. So the strength of this photo is not the mud. This portrait would have been decent without the mud. The strength of this portrait is A, the soft lighting. Look at the reflection of the eyes. This is a great way to dissect how a photo was taken. This appears to be like a bay windows, like those 3 or 4 windows right next to each other. Huge light source curving around the face, evenly lighting with soft light. Okay, that's a good start. That's doing a lot of the work. But what's really nailing this on making this an interesting portrait is they nailed the focus on the eyes. Look at the ears. The ears are like 4 inches behind the eyes, and they're quite out of focus. Jawline, out of focus. The lips, to a subtle degree, out of focus. Nose, moderate, but we nailed the focus on the eyes, and that is what is maybe imperceptibly drawing your attention to the eyes. Now, they went back in Photoshop, cleaned up the eyes, brightened the eyes, increased the color of the eyes to contrast them up. They did that, yes. But in doing that, had they not also gotten that focus correct, wouldn't have mattered. I just like this portrait. I don't think this is something that's useful for you to see in that it's almost impossible to recreate. But what I like about this portrait is it reminds me of the painting directly behind it. Right? It's this scene where everyone's got, look at this girl. Why are you sitting like that? And her, like this distant, she's listening to a description on the headphones. I know that. But she's got this distant gaze. And it's not directly oriented towards this woman, but she seems equally engaged in this way. And then this child, oh my gosh, what a neoclassical child. Neoclassical referring to a style of painting that, it's all those like super dramatic poses and things, not dissimilar from this, although I think this is in more of an impressionist period. I would also say that the photographer here noticed the lighting, just heaviest on her, and then brought that out in Photoshop too. Like I said, not useful, but I was just enamored with this one. This is potentially useful. Soft lighting bringing out shadows. Yep. And then as you look at it a little bit longer, you realize there's one hand going up here, then another over here, then another here, then another here. He had a few younger brothers. Oof. I guess that was probably a bath bomb, and then Photoshop to create higher contrast. But this is the first one where we really like say, boom, I'm definitely going for contrast and balance. Only kind of slightly odd thing about it, your lighting. So the problem with this assignment, so your previous two assignments have had their own challenges. Certainly macro is a technical challenge. The technical challenge is probably less so with portraiture, but the challenge is that you're taking pictures of people and you kind of want them to look decent, plus a principle of design. So that's in many ways even harder. Light coming up from underneath people, it's very subtle and soft, so it's not horrible. But this weird shadow line right here, you generally want the light source coming at this angle rather than this angle. But the experimentation here kind of makes up for that, and I think the principle is really clear. They took this picture, edited it, and then I said, go back and do double that. Where, what's the interesting part of this photo? It's the contrast of color. So they went back, cleaned it up. Basically, they made everything else more neutral and turned up the color here. Experiment with light. Light is one of the more accessible tools to experiment with, so I think a lot of people choose that with portraiture. I mean, we'll see it here. That cost her nothing, you know? It wasn't as simple as it might. You know, she didn't just stop. This actually was, I think, a self-portrait. But these lines and shape created through the shadows help create emphasis here. But I think it's also extremely important that she had this light here. So what's probably happening is here we have direct sunlight coming from the window shining through, I don't know what, that's weird lines if it's blinds, something that's creating these lines. And then probably down on the floor, she took the shade off of a lamp, set it on the other side of the room, and you get this subtle highlight here, redefining this jawline that would have otherwise been just darkness, and she would have had half a face. Okay, let's define portraiture. Probably should have started the video with that, huh? Okay, portraiture is the artistic representation of a person. The person can be you, in which case it's a self-portrait, or it could be someone else. You do not have to have a face in a portrait. Technically, you do not have to have a person in a portrait. Now, obviously representing a person is easily done when you have a person in the photograph, but this is an extreme example and I'm not endorsing this, but if you took someone's backpack or purse, dumped it out on the table and photographed that and said the objects photographed represent that person, I wouldn't call you wrong. Again, not endorsing cluttered items on a table as a portrait, but here again, I'm perfectly fine calling this a portrait. Environment can play a significant role. It's just one more thing to handle. I think if we do a quick little survey at the bottom of this screen on how people have approached that, you're going to find that a lot of these are quite tight in that there's not only barely a face in it, and many of these part of the face is cut off. There's less to worry about the tighter you have the shot, and the more control over those things then potentially you have. I'm fine with that. As a portrait, I see emphasis, good use of light. I think the narrative this picture creates is more substantial than any of the other pictures that we have seen that include faces. And how can that not be a portrait then? Use of light, contrast, good. Use of light, balance, emphasis. I mean, you're going to have to bring in another element. It might just be light that's your other element, but you're going to have to bring in another element. And light, sound like Yoda, but light is a positive ally. Or not positive, a great ally? I don't know. We're not going to get on that tangent. Another significant, no, not significant ally. A powerful ally. Who said that? Qui-Gon Jinn, I think. In any case, Photoshop. The original picture. So the original picture was just this one portrait. Maybe it was this background. And that's a portrait, not bad, but not very good design-wise. So then maybe this got a little carried away. But what do? You duplicate it 4 more times. You create some additional line and shape elements that will create a better sense of rhythm and movement. Abstract it a little. Done. Yeah, I'm perfectly pleased with the results from this. And this is part of the thing that I wanted to show you that I'm not going to be able to show you today, but with a little bit of luck sometime in the near future. A Photoshop aspect. I want to jump a little bit further into how to edit these to be successful. This is heavily reliant on light. Design's really not that strong in this, but this is a very nice portrait. Here again, we use Photoshop to experiment a better sense of balance and negative space, contrasting textures. Photoshop again, abstracting, experimenting, creating rhythm, light. And here's another example of that really tight control where we can manipulate the whole composition. Just experimental with the photographic process. Longer exposure. Experimenting with light. Longer exposure again, actually, but in a very different way. Light. Light reflection. Ooh, we have not seen much reflection. Reflection can be very strong too. Light, environment also, creating movement, emphasis. Light, experimentation. It's cool. All right, this works, but I am not grading your ability to do body and face painting. How it's integrated into a overall photo, perhaps that can be a positive, but do not misinterpret your painting red and green on a face as an example of great contrast if you don't consider all the other elements that has made all these other photos successful. Light, 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 light. Reflection, again, very strong, and then the photo's actually flipped. Again, a portrait does not need to show much of the face, if at all. A little bit more experimentation with Photoshop. We can demo some of that when we get a chance. How close are we? Not super close. What we're actually going to do now is take a sick baby break, and there's going to be a second part of this video where we continue, but there's not a crying baby in the background. So, yeah, we'll have that video switch over now.